All right. And so what we're going to do is navigate in the dashboard, and then we're going to see on how we would set up the Google Analytics 4 tag. And then also I'm going to do that into the event tag as well for Google Analytics 4. And then we're going to go through with the debugger as well as the Chrome dev tools. And then we're going to see like a specific button. And so we identify that specifically. And so we're going to go through that and then debug it with the Google Analytics event tag. All right. This is Tag Manager. So there's going to be a couple of things to note just here on the home screen. There's going to be changes that have happened. You will see them here if they haven't been deployed yet, and we'll go through what that looks like. There's also a description because you're apparently allowed different workspaces. I've never seen a real good use case for it, but it is something that exists. There's also going to be creating a new tag, which we'll go through. And then you could see how many changes have happened. So it gives you a tally. And then also tells you who was the last person to publish this and how long ago was it. So the other thing to note is along here, the left-hand side, this is where you're going to spend a lot of your time in here is tags. So this is when you go into the tags, it's got like the name of the tag because you get to name it. It's also the type. So there's different pre-built ones. So Google Analytics Universal, and also you can see the trigger. So this one is the phone link is clicked, and we can see the trigger is when the phone link is clicked. You can also pause them here. You check them, and then you can pause them. Or in this case, I would be playing it again or unpause it. Yeah. And so you can also categorize these into folders as well that go into here. So the triggers, you can also see the conditions that are set up. These ones have page URL contains G4 setup. I want it to be an event fires when that page is viewed. We have it the tell link, and then it's also the type. So is it just a link or is it a page view? We also have like videos if they get watched. Also scroll depth. So you can, again, when we talked about Google Analytics 4, it does 90%. So if they make it down 90% of the way, that'll get tracked as scroll depth. But you can also set it up yourself and do 25, 50, 75, 100%. So you could see where people are dropping off on pages. And then variables, there's going to be two types of variables. There's ones that are built in. So these are ones that Tag Manager does on their own. And there's also going to be ones that are user defined. So a classic one that you're going to see is Google Analytics, right? The little ID that is unique to your own Google Analytics account is definitely one that you'll see all the time. But there's other ones that are custom that we can go into, and I'm going to be covering those as well in a separate video because I'm going to be setting up a special one. Oh, and one other thing I just want to touch on is the admin section. So if you ever need to get the code again, you go to the admin section and you go inside the container level here on the right hand side. And then you go down to the fourth one down where it says install Google Tag Manager. You click on that and it will open up that code that you saw when the first time you opened it. So if anything happens, you need to get that code again, that's where you go find it. So we're trying to, yeah, what I would check, I wouldn't necessarily do this one. The event, the one you really want to be tracking the most is definitely going to be on the individual page. Yeah, this one here is where I would check as well. Yeah, so this one is where I would start because this is crucial, right? Them filling out this form is the what is most important to your business. So that's where I would start right now.
Okay.
So what we would do is you go over, hover over the submit button, you right click and you hit inspect. I'm moving it over to make it.
Don't be overwhelmed by this. So this is one failing right clicked on the button and the inspect element comes up on the website or on the computer and it opens up this window with lots of code that looks crazy.
Yeah, we can tell that this is what we're looking for because it's got type submit. So that tells us that it's definitely a submit button, which is the thing we want to track. And then what we want to do is look for something that would probably be unique to it. And in this case, G4 underscore submit as an ID is definitely something that's worth tracking. So what I would do, we won't be able to test this as much because it's technically not going to be on your website.
So Phelan, why don't you share your
Yes.
screen and go to the add a user and then Michelle can follow along.
Okay.
Cool.
So say,
So all these boxes are, if you're a marketing agency, you're gonna set up your clients with their own box. Is that right, Phelan?
it's going to be is
Yeah.
an account, just like Google Analytics 4, an account can have multiple containers under it, just like how a Google Analytics account can have multiple properties under it.
But you want, as a business owner, the ideal situation is that you have your own account. You're not a
Account.
property inside an agency's account. And
Yeah.
then you're,
So
where are you? So over in admin?
you go into Tag Manager, you click on admin, and then in admin, you go to user management.
Oh, let's share your screen.
Yeah.
So that's your container there in the middle of the screen. So click on,
In the top right-hand corner
thank you.
Great.
of the container. So
Yeah.
click on user management.
Third one down.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. And then the plus icon in the top right-hand corner and add user. And pip add Seymour Digital Media. I will type it into the chat.
Oh, you got it. .com.
.com. Yeah. And then please click on
Administrator.
yeah, but more importantly is container permissions, and then click read. Yeah, that's fine. And then the top one, publish. Awesome. And then hit done, and I will get the invitation. And
Invite.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
So you can also invite multiple people at once. Here, I'll share my screen now. WC. Yeah, there we go. So you can use the search function as well, especially if you have multiples like I do. It's definitely worth it to do that. And so we are going to be in here. So of course, this is a little more compressed. So you're probably not always going to see it like this, where they're trying to fit everything in. But we can see that this is 11th version. It was edited, last edited 22 days ago. So what I'm going to do is click add new tag. But okay, so we have the two spots that we can configure something. And we have the tag. So again, that's the what is going to be firing. And then the trigger is when it's going to be firing. So in this case, what we're going to do is we are going to configure this as a Google Analytics GA4 event. And then the configuration we're going to use is, we can have none, but we're going to use the one that you guys set up with, which is probably going to be called Google Analytics GA4 configuration.
Sorry, I know you want questions after, but I'm not going to remember this. How do we know out of that big list that you've chosen which to choose?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically, you're doing it based on the platform that you're going to be wanting to be tracking for. So in this case, we've got the Google Analytics. This is the universal one. So this is the one that's being sunset. These ones, Google Analytics GA4 configuration, this is just like regular, it's scanning the website and it's doing all the tracking. But to set up events that you can do specific, I think you mentioned that you want to track like the catering form versus the regular contact us form. You would set that up using Google Analytics GA4 event.
Okay. And what about the other stuff in that list?
So
Is
these are all,
everything- Yeah.
these are all the Google made ones. So this is Google Ads. So when you go to do the conversion tracking, you would use the conversion tracking, and they'll tell you exactly what bits of information to put in it when you go to set up a conversion in Google Ads. But they'll have something, Google Ads conversion ID, and then a label. They'll tell you those two bits of information, and all you have to do is just paste them in there, and it's easy to get going. And basically, the big thing about all of these tags is you kind of need to, you will need to know what platform, but you're just basically, because we know we're going to be doing a Google Analytics GA4 event, there's the in name right here. So we don't need to stress about trying to find. There are a whole range of them because you can scroll down. And you can also use custom HTML, which if you're using something like Microsoft Clarity, I just use raw HTML and I just pasted it in there and just named the tag Microsoft Clarity. And then I don't have to stress about like a specific build or anything like that. But most of the time, try to find a built-in one because that are usually really smoothed out a lot of the issues that could come up with it. And generally it's just better to use a built one. They also have community tags. I found them to be pretty uninspiring. They do
What
not
is
live
a
up.
community tag?
So that is people out in the community have built their own tags because it's all open source for anyone to add to it. And so you can have Agile CRM has got like their own tags that are probably related to their platform. And there's a whole bunch of these. Honestly, I wouldn't spend a lot of time in here. Like I said, I've tried it a couple of them and they sucked. I'll be honest. And it's no fault of the developers who built them. It's just I found them a little lackluster. And so I wouldn't stress about that. I would just focus on anything that's in this first section. And you can see these featured ones are all Google made ones. So, that's one that you can take a look at, and they're all part of the Google extended universe of products that they offer. And if you need anything else, you can always search like, I don't know, YouTube or other Google stuff, because there's going to be some that are down here that are other Google products that are less used. If you wanted to tag for that, then you can have that as well.
So basically, you're just saying the most used one would be that G4 analytics.
Yeah, honestly, this is the one originally the Universal Analytics, but now with the GA4 event, pretty much that's what I'm going to be doing. It's that in conversion tracking with Google Ads are pretty much the two things I'm spending almost all my time on.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And one other one, if you go to set up Facebook Pixel stuff, custom HTML is the one you would use for that. But we'll cover that. If you guys have any questions about that, we can cover that a bit more once you guys get used to it. But for just getting started, we're going to go into this tag, the GA4 event. And we've already set it to the same ID that we've already given it before. And we're going to call this event, apply now, form filled.
And then just on New Westminster.
Just a quick question. Is it the same form for both of them, or are they two different forms on the back end?
It's the same form for the two different campuses. So it just fires to two different people, to each of the admissions coordinators. Two different ed accounts. And then
I might, if I were going to do something like that, I might have an option to as like a radio button that's like Victoria or New West. So that way, as it comes into the email, that way the team knows, they don't have to ask anyone anything. They've already.
It'll only go to them because at the beginning, like where you clicked on that apply now, you had to choose whether it was New West or Victoria.
Oh, okay.
Relevant to them.
Yeah. Okay. So this one, I'll say, and the naming conventions are specific in Google Analytics 4. So you're going to do new, and you don't do spaces, you do underscores. So New West, apply, form, filled. So you're going to, leave underscores between each of the spaces. And no capitalizations. They don't like any of that stuff. So you can add extra parameters. Remember how I talked about in Google Analytics 4 that you can add as many different parameters. I think, Michelle, we looked at an option. We're probably going to have a one-on-one where we redo this so that it has the really upgraded one from Gravity Forms, because they had the one where they collect all that information that's on the form and it actually submits it into your Google Analytics so that you can do like a lot of really cool analysis. So, but it's going to be very advanced, because like I was looking at it and I was like, this would be intimidating if I did not know what was going on. Now we're going to choose the trigger. So we've got a couple of ones that are already pre-built. And so there's one that will always be there no matter what, is the all pages. And it's basically, that's your classic Google Analytics, right? You just want it on every page, just collecting information. But in this case, we're actually going to want it to fire in a very specific circumstance. So one thing, oh, and in order to do that part, I did miss one little step that you guys are all going to need to do before we actually get to this part. So I'm just going to save the name, discard this because you do actually need, I always forget this when I'm teaching because I'm so excited about the tag that I forget that we actually need the variables to be activated so that Google Tag Manager can know to track like the class of this item, what's the text on the button, all these little bits of information. And so how you do that is you go to variable and you've already got them activated. Pretty much everyone else, this is not going to be activated, but you need this to do the event tracking because we're going to be using the click. So when that click happens, we want all this information to be captured in the data layer. So we can tell, oh, this click had this particular elements about it. Okay, that's the one I want. And so this is the way that Tag Manager knows to grab this bits of information. So what I usually do is I'll go to click configure in the top right-hand corner, and all these ones are going to be activated by default. And then the ones were really important, clicks. So all the elements of somewhere where someone's clicked. You can also do form submissions. These can be a little bit more complicated. That's why I go for the click when we're getting started and just learning about how this all works. This is going to be a lot easier for you if we do the clicks. And then I also like to turn on video. So this is anything about a person watching a video. We can see the video URL, the video title, how far they made it into the video. So these are all really cool things, especially going back to that Google Analytics 4 with custom audience builds. I want to see all the people who only made it to 50% of the video, not 100%, and make an audience for retargeting out of that. So really cool stuff in there. A scroll. Again, we were talking about, I want to track who's making it to, say you have a little email sign up halfway down the page. You want to track everyone who made it to halfway down the page, but didn't fill that out. Those are the people that you want to be targeting. So there's ways that you can actually have the scroll depth become new audiences as well. All right. And once you've clicked on them, that's all you need to do. Close this. And we're going to go back to the tags. So one way that we showed you of creating a new tag on the home screen, click a new tag. The other way is to go into the tags and to click new. And again, we know we're going to do a GA4 event. We know that we're going to use the ID that we set up the GA4 configuration tag. And again, we're going to put in our uncapitalized underscore between each word. I think there's a name for that, but I can't remember. And then in the trigger, we are going to go click on the plus icon. And we're going to configure this trigger. So it's going to throw us a bunch of options. And in this particular case, what we're going to do is we're looking at that click elements, right? And so this is either it's a link or it's all elements. We're going to do all elements because we don't want just a link. We want anything that has this particular ID we want to be tracking. Just in case there's something, it does some weird stuff. I've had situations where you think the link is good and it doesn't. So generally I find it safer to do all elements. And then we don't want it to fire on all the clicks. We want it to fire on a specific one. So we're going to say some clicks. And this is where we're going to use. So we've got a click class. So it's saying the class. So that's a little bit of CSS. Basically, they have IDs or classes. And they just say that if you have this class, style it this way. So that way, instead of writing custom CSS for each single button, you say, anytime this element has the class of button, always look like this. And so that's where the inspecting element kind of kicks in. And so now when we inspect this and it highlights this, we can see that it has the class of gform underscore button space button. So that's a pretty general, because that means any button that's using Gravity Forms could be triggered by that. So we don't want that. But I see here with the ID that it uses a gform, so this Gravity Form underscore submit. Okay, so that's a much more unique ID that's specific to this form, because it even has a little value there. So I'm gonna guess it's specific to this form.
Yeah.
So we go in back to Tag Manager and we don't want click classes. We want the click ID, meaning that if someone were to click on this element and it has this ID that we've found here, that's when I want it to fire. So it's very specific to that button when someone clicks on that button. And we're going to put in GForm submit button 23.
You need to name that trigger.
Yeah. And so as soon as you hit save, just like when you guys did it with the GA4 configuration setup, it's going to say, give you a name. Of course, this one is, it's not as, we're not going to go with the default one because that's not helpful at all as a name. So what we're going to do is New West apply form filled. So that way we can identify it as the New West page, and then we know it's a form being filled. So it makes it easy for you guys coming back later and you're like, oh, rather than just have it be like all elements one, which wouldn't be very helpful, we now have a much more specific name that we can use. So now we're going to do the same thing again. And in this case, this is totally up to you. Personal preference, I like to have it where it's GA4 event at the very start. So that way I know, oh, this is an event tag. I don't have to do a lot of thinking. And then the next part is going to be, and pretty much the same name as the trigger. It's what I usually do. Form filled. So here's another thing to notice is on the top of it here, it says workspace changes 13. So we've changed a bunch of things on your tag manager, and including making this tag, making this trigger. And we can see all of that when we go to click the submit. It will have everything that we've changed. So we added a bunch of built-in variables that's included in this part, but we also had the new trigger and we have a new tag. And so and I always say, give your version a name. It's not like the end of the world, but it will just make it easier in case you guys are like, what were we doing? If you're working in teams and people are changing this all the time, definitely you have to have names, like naming conventions. And in this case, we're not going to reinvent the world. Event apply form filled. And we're going to hit publish. So now what we're going to do, I want to test this out. So the next step is you're going to need to have this Chrome extension. What is Tag Assistant conversion? Yeah, this guy, I'm going to put him in the chat for you guys. So this Chrome extension is very similar to the legacy Tag Assistant. This one's a little bit better for debugging if something's not firing or how many tags are there. This one's much better, but for debugging if the event tracking that you've done is working, this one is really good because it's custom built to work with Tag Manager. So what we do is we hit preview. And when this opens up, there's going to be this new window and they're going to ask, well, which URL do you want to go to? And in this case, I'm going to copy this and we're going to open it up in a new window. And you'll see down here in the bottom corner, it tells you that we're connected. And you can even tell that it's connected because this will flash here. And it says connected. So if anything goes wrong, then they're pretty quick to tell you that you're not connected anymore. When you are in there, you will see that there is the tag manager we're in. And you can also see what has fired and also see what has not fired. Okay, so we've got a couple things along here. So this is going to start with the tags, and it tells you which ones. This says that they're paused. And then this one is the one we are trying to test out and it didn't activate, which is good because we told it not to activate just when you land on the page. So now what we need to do is go back over to the page, and I'm not going to fill this out. I'm just going to test if the tracking worked. When you go to make these into conversions, try not to use my $5 word for this, but it's really hard not to. But it will be idempotent, which is a really fancy way of saying only one time will count. So it's a singular event that it will track. Even if, say, you had to click it a couple times, it knows that this person actually just meant to fill out the form once. And so it'll only track the one conversion. the only time that wouldn't happen is with e-commerce, because if someone fills out the credit card, fills out the checkout twice, you want to keep track of that. But generally, you don't need to worry about it. So I'm going to click the button that we were tracking, the submit button on the form. But the tag did fire, which is what we did expect, because like most people are not just going to click, no one's just going to click on the submit button. The other thing that we can see in here is you can click into, here we go. So we've got request for information. That's the page. And it also has a bunch of information about so we got a click here. So that we can see that there was a click, and we can see, yeah, different variables that are in there. You're not going to really need this part, but we can see that our click ID had the thing we were tracking. So perfect. That's exactly what we were expecting. So that's good. I'm happy with that. Again, you also have data layer, and consent is going to be more important if you are in California or the EU. That's where it needs to be affirmatively given consent. There's a whole system for setting that up, but you don't need to worry. And that means that that did work, and that is exactly what we expected. So that is awesome news for us that we tracked everything.